Ambassador Elena Chen straightened her formal diplomatic uniform as the massive iridescent doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open. The journey to this moment had taken humanity decades. First contact, proving they weren't a threat, then years of petitioning for a hearing before the Council. Now, standing at the threshold of galactic civilization, Elena felt the weight of 7 billion human souls on her shoulders. "Remember," she whispered to her small delegation, "whatever happens, we represent Earth with dignity." The chamber beyond stole their breath away. A vast dome stretched overhead, its surface a living star map showing real-time movements of every major celestial body in the galaxy. Tiered seating rose in concentric circles, filled with representatives of hundreds of species, some humanoid, others defying description. Bioluminescent creatures floated near the ceiling. Crystalline entities refracted light into dazzling patterns. Massive tentacled beings occupied specially designed environment pods. All eyes, optical sensors, and sensory organs turned toward the humans. The delegation followed their assigned protocol drone down the central walkway. Elena heard murmurs, clicks, and telepathic whispers rippling through the assembly. So fragile-looking. Primitive respiratory system. Their homeworld still has combustion vehicles. I heard they sleep for a third of their life cycle. At the chamber's center stood the tribunal dais, a floating platform where 7 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy awaited. Supreme Executor Vexlar dominated the group, his 12-foot frame draped in ceremonial metals that shifted colors with his moods. His face, a collection of sensory tentacles surrounding 3 golden eyes, showed no expression Elena could interpret. The humans took their position on the petitioner's circle, a platform that suddenly illuminated beneath their feet. Earth delegation. Vexlar's voice resonated unnaturally, translated and amplified throughout the chamber. You stand before the Galactic Council, which has governed interstellar civilization for 10,000 years. You seek recognition and entry into our covenant of species. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady. We do, Supreme Executor. Humanity extends its hand in friendship and cooperation. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber at her choice of words. Many species present had no concept of hands. Vexlar's central eye focused on her. As is our custom, all petitioning species must be evaluated and classified. The judgment sphere will assess your civilization's advancement. From above, a perfect sphere of what appeared to be liquid metal descended, stopping to hover between the tribunal and the humans. Its surface swirled with complex patterns. The sphere analyzes all available data on your species, explained Vexlar. Technological development, societal structures, biological capabilities, historical progress, all factors are considered. The sphere began to pulse, its surface changing colors rapidly, blue, green, purple, before settling into a deep, dull red. The collective murmur swept through the chamber. Vexlar's facial tentacles twisted slightly. Was that surprise? Disappointment? Elena couldn't tell. The judgment is complete, he announced. Earth is classified as a Class D civilization. The human delegation exchanged confused glances. Dr. Kessler, their xenoanthropologist, inhaled sharply. That is, Vexlar continued, a civilization deemed technologically and evolutionarily inferior, requiring guidance and oversight. Class D species are granted observer status only. No voting rights, no territorial expansion permits, no access to restricted technologies. You will be assigned appropriate serval roles within Council infrastructure. Elena felt a cold fury building inside her. Supreme Executor, with respect, we traveled 27 light years to be judged on a single metric. Humanity has overcome ice ages, plagues, world wars. And yet, interrupted a willowy being to Vexlar's right, you still die from minor radiation exposure. Your bodies break from simple gravitational changes. Your technology requires physical interaction rather than neural linking. Minister Joven speaks truth, Vexlar said. The judgment sphere does not err. Your civilization is primitive, dangerous to itself and potentially to others if given access to advanced technologies. Alina stepped forward again, breaking protocol. The guards tensed, but Vexillar raised a hand to halt them. Thousands of years ago, Alina said, her voice carrying throughout the chamber, humans believed the earth was flat. We thought illness was caused by evil spirits. We couldn't fly, or split atoms, or cure cancer. But we never stopped trying. We never stopped learning. Her eyes locked with Vexillar's central eye. You've judged us by what we've achieved. You should be more concerned with what we're capable of becoming. A tense silence fell over the chamber. Noted, Ambassador. Vexillar finally responded, his tone dismissive. But the judgment stands. The human delegation will be escorted to Class D quarters and assigned appropriate duties. This session is concluded. As they were led away, Commander Rivera leaned close to Alina. So that's it. We're galactic janitors now. Alina watched Minister Joven studying them with unusual intensity. Something about his gaze made her skin crawl. No, she replied quietly. This is just the beginning. They've made a serious mistake. What's that? Alina's lips curved in a slight smile. They've underestimated us. Humans have a long history of proving people wrong when they do that. As the doors closed behind them, none of the council members noticed the brief flicker in the judgment sphere, a momentary flash of brilliant white before it returned to red. Raj Patel wiped sweat from his brow as he navigated the cramped maintenance tunnels of Sector 7. After the judgment, the human delegation had been separated and assigned to various appropriate duties throughout the massive council station. For Raj, former lead engineer of the Jupiter orbital platform, this meant reporting to Kivrak, the perpetually irritated insectoid head engineer responsible for the station's cooling systems. Primitive. Move faster, Kivrak's translator chittered. The 8-foot insectoid's mandibles clicked impatiently as his 4 upper limbs gestured at the malfunctioning coolant regulator. 3 cycles this unit fails. Council demands repair before diplomatic reception. Raj bit back a retort. 3 days on the station had taught him that arguing with superiors, especially as a Class D auxiliary, earned nothing but trouble. Instead, he studied the complex machinery, noting how the crystalline coolant pulsed erratically through transparent conduits. "Hand me the quantum spanner," Kivrak demanded, extending one clawed appendage without looking at Raj. Instead of complying, Raj pulled a stylus from his pocket and quickly sketched a diagram on his datapad. Years working with experimental cooling systems on Uraba had trained his eye to recognize patterns others missed. "Sir," he said carefully, "I think I see the problem." Kivrak's compound eyes swiveled. Silence. Class D does not think. Class D hands tools. Raj persisted, stepping forward and holding up his sketch. The coolant routing passes directly through the gravitational compensator field. See these microfractures. Dimensional stress is causing quantum state fluctuations in the coolant. The insectoid froze, mandibles twitching as multiple eyes focused on the diagram. "Impossible," Kivrak whispered, but he moved closer to examine the coolant lines. No Class D mind cooled. He stopped mid-sentence, antennae quivering. "These fractures. When did you notice?" "Almost immediately," Raj said. "On Earth, we learned to identify stress patterns in hostile environments. What if we reroute the coolant like this?" He sketched a new configuration that would bypass the gravitational field entirely. Kivrak stared at the diagram, then at Raj. Something shifted in his demeanor. "This solution, it contradicts standard practices, but the principles are sound." He paused. "Implement your design, human. I will observe." 2 levels above, in the station's training arena, Marine Sergeant Sarah Martinez found herself similarly underestimated. Assigned to security training as a demonstration subject, she stood in a circular combat zone surrounded by Chronax warriors, reptilian humanoids with scaled armor-like skin and renowned fighting prowess. Class D specimens lack both exoskeletons and significant muscle density, the Kronax combat instructor explained to his students. However, they make adequate training partners due to their high pain tolerance and quick recovery from non-lethal injuries. Martinez kept her expression neutral despite the fury building inside her. 15 years of Special Forces training hadn't prepared her for being treated like a punching bag. Trainee Graxtor, demonstrate the standard immobilization technique, the instructor ordered. A young Kronax, still with bright green scales indicating adolescence, stepped forward confidently. He circled Martinez, his movements telegraphing his intended attack so clearly she almost sighed. When he lunged, Martinez sidestepped with practiced ease, using his momentum against him. A quick pivot, a precisely applied pressure point strike, where scales met softer tissue, and the 7-foot Kronax hit the mat with a thunderous impact. Silence fell across the training arena. How? The instructor's translator struggled to convey his shock. The technique was perfect. Martinez helped the dazed Graxtor to his feet. Your technique assumes opponents will resist with strength against strength. Humans learned long ago that's rarely the optimal approach. The instructor's inner eyelids narrowed. Again. Graxtor, no holding back this time. 3 more attempts yielded 3 more defeats, each using different human combat techniques that left the Kronax warriors increasingly confused and the instructor increasingly agitated. Enough, he finally barked. This is irregular. He studied Martinez with new intensity. Tomorrow, you will demonstrate these techniques to the full class. Meanwhile, in the medical wing, Dr. Marcus Wong found himself facing similar prejudice and surprise. Assigned to assist with data entry, the only task deemed suitable for a primitive medical practitioner, he couldn't help noticing patterns in the patient logs that the station's AI had overlooked. These symptoms across different species, he mentioned to his supervisor, the many-limbed Dr. Selnera. They follow a consistent neurological progression despite different physiologies. Nonsense, Selnera dismissed without looking up. Our diagnostic AI confirmed no correlation. Your AI is programmed to look for established patterns, Wong persisted, pulling up multiple patient files on his terminal. It's dismissing connections below certain statistical thresholds. But look, the timing, the progression, these irregular protein markers. On Earth, we'd recognize this as enough. Selnera snapped, finally looking at Wong's display. She froze, multiple eyes widening as she processed the data presented in this new configuration. That's impossible. These cases shouldn't show any relationship. Wong smiled slightly. Sometimes seeing patterns where others don't is the only way to survive on a planet with thousands of diseases. We call it medical intuition. In his private chambers, Supreme Executor Vexlar reviewed security reports with growing unease. 3 separate incidents of Class D humans demonstrating unexpected capabilities in a single cycle was highly irregular. Perhaps Minister Zoven's concerns had merit after all. He opened a secure channel. Increase surveillance on all human personnel. I want detailed reports on any anomalies. Something about these humans defied classification, and in Vexlar's 10,000 years of experience, anything that couldn't be classified was inherently dangerous. Ambassador Elena Chen was midway through another frustrating diplomatic briefing, relegated to taking notes while senior council species debated migration policies, when the station's alarms erupted in a cacophony of wailing tones. The holographic displays throughout the chamber flickered, then stabilized to show a terrifying sight. A fleet of angular black ships emerging from hyperspace, their hulls covered in jagged protrusions that resembled nothing so much as bared teeth. Nexari warships, gasped a tentacled diplomat. Impossible. They wouldn't dare. But the evidence hovered before them, undeniable. The Nexari, a violent expansionist race from the outer systems, had brought their war to the very heart of galactic civilization. The council representatives erupted in panic. Some fled for the exits while others froze in shock. The senior diplomats huddled together, frantically consulting emergency protocols on their neural interfaces. The station shuddered violently as the first volley of plasma torpedoes struck the outer shields. The lights dimmed momentarily before emergency power engage. Primary shields at 40% and falling, announced the station's AI in a disturbingly calm voice. Evacuation protocols initiated. All non-essential personnel proceed to designated escape pods. Alina grabbed the arm of a passing council security officer. What's happening? Where are the defense fleet? Ambush, the officer replied, mandibles clicking in distress. Defense fleet was lured to the Cygnus sector by false distress signals. We have minimal defensive capabilities until reinforcements arrive. Another impact rocked the station. This time, the lights didn't return to full brightness. Shields have failed, the AI announced. Hull breaches detected in sectors 4, 7, and 12. Security lockdown initiating in affected areas. Alina's military training kicked in. She quickly assessed the situation. They were under attack, defenses were compromised, and the station's leadership was paralyzed by indecision. Around her, diplomats from dozens of worlds, many from species that hadn't seen conflict in centuries, were panicking. "Listen up," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. When no one responded, she grabbed a ceremonial gong from a nearby display and struck it hard. The resonant tone silenced the room. "We need to organize," Alina stated firmly. "Those with medical training, form a group here." She pointed to one corner. "Those with security or military background here." She indicated another spot. "Everyone else, you'll assist with civilian evacuation and communications." "You cannot give orders," protested a tall, willowy alien with luminescent skin, Minister Zovan of the Palaxians. "You are Class D. This crisis requires proper chain of command." "And where is that chain of command right now?" Alina challenged. "I see a room full of diplomats, not crisis responders. Every minute we waste arguing protocol is a minute the Nexari advance further into this station." Before Jovan could reply, the chamber doors burst inward. 5 heavily armored figures stalked through the smoke. Nexari boarding troops. Their environment suits concealed most of their features, but their glowing red sensory arrays swept the room like predatory eyes seeking prey. "Surrender and you will be processed humanely," announced the lead Nexari, its voice distorted through its translator. Minister Jovan immediately stepped forward, hands raised. "We surrender. Violence is unnecessary." The Palaxian Consortium has always respected Nexari territorial claims and... The Nexari commander cut him off with a dismissive gesture. "All council species will be processed according to new protocols." "Resistance is..." The commander never finished his sentence. Alina had used the distraction to reach an environmental control panel. With swift, practiced movements, she tore it from the wall, exposed its circuitry, and cross-wired the temperature regulators. A jet of supercooled gas, normally used to maintain optimal atmospheric conditions for diverse species, blasted the Nexari troops, instantly freezing their armor joints. "Now!" Alina shouted, grabbing a decorative staff from a wall display. The few humans in the diplomatic corps responded immediately, arming themselves with whatever was at hand. A Kronak security officer, impressed by the quick thinking, joined them, using his massive strength to topple a frozen Nexari soldier. In 30 seconds, the immediate threat was neutralized. The diplomats stared in shock at the scene, and at the humans who had acted so decisively. Alina turned to the stunned audience. "The Nexari won't expect resistance from a diplomatic sector. We have surprise on our side, but not for long." She pointed to the station schematics displayed on a still-functioning wall panel. "We need to reach the security hub in Sector 6 to coordinate with any remaining defense forces. Why should we follow you?" Challenged Jovan, though with less conviction than before. A Thrix diplomat, their insectoid features unreadable, stepped forward. "Because she acted while you surrendered, Minister. I for one prefer action." The Thrix turned multiple compound eyes toward Alina. "What is your plan, human?" Alina glanced at the makeshift weapons they'd assembled and the determined faces of her impromptu resistance force, a mix of humans and aliens united by the crisis. The Nexari expected to find a hierarchy they could decapitate, she replied, a grim smile forming. Instead, they're about to discover something far more dangerous, a coalition with nothing to lose. As if to punctuate her words, the station shuddered again as more boarding pods punctured its hull. The siege had only just begun, but so had the resistance, led by the very species the Council had deemed inferior only days before. Kirill Ta, strategos of the Council's elite security forces, slammed her feathered fist on the command console. The avian commander's plumage bristled with agitation as she watched the security feeds showing Nexari troops advancing methodically through the station's main corridors. They're following standard invasion protocols, she hissed to her remaining officers, now reduced to a skeletal crew after the initial assault. We've lost 60% of our defensive positions. Her second-in-command, a feline meridian with tactical augmentations, gestured to another screen. Strategos, you should see this. The feed showed something unexpected. Scattered resistance cells forming throughout the station, engaging in guerrilla tactics against the Nexari. Most surprising was their composition. Humans appeared to be at the center of nearly every successful counterattack. Impossible, Kirill muttered, leaning closer. These Class D primitives with improvised weapons against quantum disruptors. Yet the evidence was undeniable. In Sector 9, a human female, Martinez, according to her identification tag, was leading a mixed group of security personnel in rapid hit-and-run attacks, using maintenance tunnels to outflank Nexari patrols. In the medical wing, that human doctor, Wong, had transformed the infirmary into both a treatment center and a production facility for chemical countermeasures against Nexari weaponry. Most surprising was the feed from the station's engineering hub, where Raj Patul worked alongside Kivrak to reroute critical systems, staying one step ahead of Nexari attempts to disable life support. Their tactics are unorthodox, the Meridian observed. They don't follow any strategic doctrine in our database. Kirill's communicator chimed with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared belonged to Ambassador Elena Chen. Behind her, Kirill could see a makeshift command center established in what appeared to be a maintenance junction. Strategos Kirill, Elena greeted formally. We've secured Junction 42 and established a secondary defense network. Our scans show your position is becoming untenable. Nexari forces are converging on your location from 3 vectors. Kirill bristled at the human's presumption. This is the primary security hub. We will hold our position as protocol dictates. Elena's expression remained calm but firm. With respect, strategos, conventional protocols are failing. The Nexari have clearly studied them. We've counter-hacked their communications. They're anticipating your every move because they've prepared for standard Council defensive patterns. And what do you propose instead? Kirill challenged, amber eyes narrowing. Fall back to our position. Your remaining forces would be more effective joining our network of resistance cells. We're using methods the Nexari haven't prepared for. Retreat. To Class D leadership. Preposterous. Kirill's plumage flared fully now, a sign of extreme agitation among her species. Elena's expression hardened. Your conventional tactics have lost 3 sectors and 200 lives. We've reclaimed 5 sectors with 0 casualties. Your choice. Strategos. Before Kirill could respond, the security hub's blast doors shuddered under heavy impact. The Nexari had arrived. We have approximately 4 minutes before they breach that door, Elena stated calmly. Junction 42. The choice is yours. The transmission ended. The Meridian officer looked to Kirill, awaiting orders. After a moment of internal struggle, the avian commander made her decision. Evacuate the hub. We move to Junction 42. Meanwhile, in a water reclamation facility in Sector 14, a different alliance was forming. 3 aquatic Merlani engineers, initially hiding from the invasion, had emerged from their protective tanks to find Sergeant Martinez and her team using the facility as a forward base. Your tactics intrigue us, burbled the lead Merlani, her translator converting underwater vocalizations to standard speech. "You use the station's infrastructure in ways not intended by its designers." Martinez grinned as she modified a water pressure valve into an improvised weapon. "Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When you don't have the right tools, you make do with what you have." The Merlani communicated among themselves through rapid color changes across their translucent skin, a form of communication their translators didn't convert. Finally, the leader turned back to Martinez. "We can navigate the liquid transport systems," she offered. "All water reclamation tubes, coolant lines, and hydraulic systems, areas no Nexari could access." Martinez's eyes widened at the strategic possibilities. "Could you map those systems? Create pathways between our resistance cells?" "Better," the Merlani responded, her skin flushing blue with excitement. "We can travel through them. Carry messages, small supplies, sabotage Nexari positions from within." In another sector, Dr. Wong found unexpected allies in the crystalline Vox, a species generally regarded as pacifists and relegated to low-status positions despite their unique abilities. Their crystalline bodies could absorb and redirect energy, a talent they had been forbidden from developing militarily under Council regulations. "You're saying you can absorb a Nexari energy blast and redirect it?" Wong asked the Vox Elder, whose multifaceted form shimmered with internal light. "We do not speak of these capabilities," the Elder responded hesitantly. "Council classification restricts energy manipulation to Class A species only." Wong shook his head in frustration. "The Council isn't in charge right now. The station is falling, and people are dying. Your abilities could save lives." The Vox communicated among themselves through pulses of light faster than most species could perceive. Their debate lasted only seconds. "We will help," the Elder finally decided. "Our younglings have always had theoretical interest in energy weaponry." From his emergency bunker, Supreme Executor Vexlar watched these developments with growing fascination and alarm. His most trusted advisors were divided. Some argued for immediate evacuation, while others demanded he authorize the station's self-destruct systems rather than allow it to fall to the Nexari. Instead, Vexlar continued watching the security feeds, particularly the human-led resistance efforts. These humans didn't just adapt themselves, they catalyzed adaptation in others. Species that had been contained and controlled by the Council's classification system for centuries were suddenly unleashing previously suppressed capabilities. It was terrifying. It was revolutionary. It was exactly what Minister Joven had warned about. "They've created more change in 3 days than we've permitted in 3 centuries, Vexlar murmured to himself. For the first time in his 300-year life, the Supreme Executor did something unprecedented. He left his secure bunker. He needed to see these humans in action with his own eyes, before deciding whether to help them save the station or destroy it completely. "This plan is suicide," Strategos Kirill stated flatly, her feathers bristling as she studied the holographic display of the station's command center. The central hub had been fully fortified by Nexari forces, transformed into an impenetrable stronghold with overlapping fields of fire and multiple redundant defense systems. The gathered resistance leaders, human and alien alike, stood around the tactical display in the cramped confines of Junction 42. What had started as Elena's makeshift command post had evolved into the heart of the station's defense, a nexus where species once divided by the Council's rigid hierarchy now worked as equals. Sergeant Martinez merely grinned at Kirill's assessment. "That's precisely why it'll work. The Nexari are expecting a logical approach, overwhelming force through the main corridors. Instead, we give them something no tactical simulation would predict." She gestured to Raj Patel, who stepped forward and expanded the holographic display to show a cross-section of the station. "During our maintenance work, I discovered something interesting," Raj explained, highlighting a network of narrow tunnels running beneath the command center. These waste reclamation tubes connect directly to the environmental control systems under the command center floor. "Waste tubes," Carol's vocal membranes vibrated with disgust. "You propose we attack through sewage channels. They're normally impassable," Raj acknowledged. "The atmosphere is toxic, and several sections are filled with liquid waste." But he nodded to the representatives of their newer allies. The crystalline Vox Elder stepped forward, multifaceted body refracting the room's light. "We can temporarily transmute the atmosphere in these tunnels, rendering it breathable for short periods. And the liquid sections are no barrier to us," added the Merlani representative, her translucent skin pulsing with patterns of communication. "We can navigate them and disable any sensors from within." Kivarak, who had become one of Raj's strongest supporters, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "The entry points would still be too small for most warriors." "That's where the Thrix come in," Martinez continued, nodding to the insectoid species representative. "Their natural exoskeletons can compress to navigate the narrowest passages. They'll lead the infiltration team." Meanwhile, Elena added, "The main Thrix hive mind will create a telepathic projection mimicking a full frontal assault. Their psychic abilities can fool Nexari sensors into detecting a major force approaching through the main corridors." The Thrix representative's antennae quivered with what might have been pride. "Our collective consciousness can sustain the illusion for precisely 6.3 minutes before the deception becomes detectable. That's our window," Martinez concluded. "A small strike team enters through the waste reclamation system, breaches the command center from below, and disables their central communications array. Without unified command, their forces throughout the station will be isolated and can be defeated in detail." Carol's avian features contorted in what might have been a frown. "The probability of success is—" "Don't tell me the odds," Martinez interrupted. "Just tell me if you're in." A tense silence fell over the group as everyone looked to the Strategos. As the highest-ranking military officer present, her support was crucial. After a moment that felt like eternity, Carol's plumage settled into a configuration that signaled determination. "I have studied your tactics, Sergeant Martinez. They defy conventional strategic doctrine, yet they have proven effective." Her amber eyes narrowed. "I will commit my remaining forces to this human plan." While the strike team prepared, Raj pulled Elena aside. "There's something else," he said quietly. "I've been analyzing the station's security protocols since the attack began. The Nexari shouldn't have been able to bypass our shields so easily. Someone had to have compromised the defense systems from inside." Elena's expression darkened. "Jovan, we can't prove that yet, but there's more. I've identified a way to reactivate the station's automated defense grid. If we can reach the core systems room, we could recalibrate the security protocols to recognize the Nexari ships as hostile again. They're currently not flagged as hostile." Raj shook his head. "Someone specifically authorized their approach. This wasn't just an attack. It was an inside job. Take Dr. Wong, and whatever support you need." Elena decided. "If we can reactivate the station's defenses while Martinez's team takes the command center, we might just save this station." As the two operations launched simultaneously, Supreme Executor Vexlar watched from the shadows of a maintenance corridor. He had moved through the station undetected, using ancient override codes to bypass security systems. What he witnessed both alarmed and fascinated him. These disparate species, many of whom had been deliberately kept separate by council policy for centuries, were working together with surprising effectiveness. At the center of it all were the humans, catalyzing cooperation, where the council had always fostered hierarchical separation. Vexlar's three eyes blinked asynchronously as he processed this revelation. Perhaps Minister Jovan had been right to fear the humans, but for entirely wrong reasons. The real danger wasn't that humans would destroy the established order. The danger was that they would transform it into something unrecognizable. As Martinez's strike team vanished into the reclamation tube entrance and Raj's group moved toward the core systems room, Vexlar made a decision that would break 10,000 years of protocol. He would not interfere. He would observe. And perhaps, for the first time in centuries, he would learn. The command center was secure, Bodies of Nexeri troops lay scattered across the polished floor, their advanced armor useless against the unexpected attack from below. Sergeant Martinez stood over the Nexeri commander, the alien's environment suit cracked open to reveal the surprisingly delicate creature within. "Secure the prisoner and establish a perimeter," Martinez ordered, her makeshift coalition of warriors moving with practiced efficiency despite having fought together for less than a day. Elena surveyed the room, noting how the Thrix worked seamlessly alongside Kirill's avian security personnel, while the crystalline Vox methodically absorbed residual energy from disabled Nexeri weapons. What would have been impossible under normal council protocols now seemed almost natural. "We did it," Elena breathed, allowing herself a moment of relief. "Ambassador," called one of the Merlani technicians, her translucent skin flashing with urgent color patterns. "I've accessed their communication array. There's something you should see." Elena joined the aquatic alien at the central console. The screen displayed a series of encrypted transmissions between the Nexeri fleet and a council terminal. The Merlani's webbed fingers danced across the interface, decoding the data with surprising skill. The signal origin. The Merlani's colors shifted to patterns indicating shock. "It's coming from Minister Jovan's private chambers." Elena's expression hardened. The pieces suddenly fit together. Jovan's eagerness to surrender during the initial attack, his persistent opposition to human leadership, his suspicious interest in Earth's delegation since their arrival. "Martinez, you have command here. I need to find Jovan." "Not alone," Martinez protested. "I need you here," Elena insisted. "If this goes wrong, you're the station's best hope." She took a small team, a Thrix scout, a Vox warrior, and Dr. Wong, who had just reported success in restoring some of the station's automated defenses. Together, they moved swiftly through corridors still bearing scars of battle, bypassing lingering pockets of Nexeri resistance. Jovan's private chambers were located in the privileged upper sectors of the station, areas specifically designed for the highest-ranking council officials. The door was unsealed, suspicious in itself during an invasion. "Stay alert," Elena whispered as they entered. The chamber beyond displayed the austere luxury typical of the willowy Palaxians, minimal furnishings crafted from rare materials, walls lined with data crystals containing millennia of accumulated knowledge. At the center of the room, Minister Jovan stood calmly before a holographic display, reviewing data as if there were no crisis raging throughout the station. "Minister," Elena called out, her voice cold. "I think it's time we talked." Jovan turned, his luminescent skin pulsing with soft light that betrayed no surprise at their arrival. "Ambassador Chen, how predictable. I calculated an 87.4% probability you would trace the transmissions. You wanted me to find you." Elena realized, tension coiling within her. "Why?" Jovan gestured toward the holographic display. It shifted to show detailed files on human history, warfare, technological adaptation, environmental resilience, cultural evolution. "You proved my point, human." His thin lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Look how quickly you rose from Class D servant to station savior. Imagine what your kind will become in a century, in a millennium." He expanded the display, revealing thousands of data points tracking humanity's developmental trajectory. The Nexeri attack was regrettable but necessary. The Council has maintained galactic stability for 10,000 years by carefully managing emerging species. Humanity cannot be managed. You are chaos incarnate. So you orchestrated an attack on your own people. Elena's voice rose in disbelief. Thousands have died. A small price to eliminate a greater threat. Jovan's eyes narrowed, their pale color suddenly seeming cold and alien. Many on the council share my concerns. They've seen what I've seen now. Humans don't just adapt, they transform everything around them. Today, you saved the station. Tomorrow, you'll remake the galaxy in your unpredictable image. And that terrifies you, Elena realized. Not that we'll destroy civilization, but that we'll change it. Change leads to disorder. Disorder leads to suffering. Jovan's voice remained eerily calm. Your species has endured because your planet is chaotic, but the galaxy requires stability. The stability we have maintained for millennia. Elena was about to respond when movement in the shadows caught her attention. Supreme Executor Vexlar stepped into the light, his expression unreadable, facial tentacles completely still, a sign of intense focus among his kind. "Is this true, Minister?" he asked quietly, his normally resonant voice barely above a whisper. No one had noticed the station's broadcast system was still active, transmitting their conversation to every functioning screen on the station. Throughout the facility, humans and aliens alike paused in their battles and rescue efforts to watch the confrontation unfolding. "Supreme Executor," Jovan began, composure finally cracking. "I acted to preserve our way of life. These humans saved us," Vexlar interrupted, "while you conspired with our enemies." "Not enemies," Jovan insisted. "Tools. The Nexari would have withdrawn once the humans were eliminated. Acceptable losses to maintain cosmic order." Vexlar's three eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of profound disappointment in his culture. How many others in the council supported this solution? Jovan straightened, regaining his aristocratic bearing. Enough. The vote was taken in secret session. The humans were deemed too dangerous to permit their further development. Throughout the station, council representatives watched in horror as their conspiracy was exposed. Some immediately began drafting denials. Others prepared escape vessels. A few considered the implications of what they were witnessing, a fundamental challenge to the very foundation of their 10,000-year-old system. "You speak of order," Elena said into the silence, addressing not just Jovan, but the entire watching station. "But true stability doesn't come from control and classification. It comes from cooperation, from embracing diversity rather than fearing it." Vexlar's gaze shifted between Elena and Jovan, between a future of uncertain change and a past built on calculated suppression. The moment of choice had arrived, not just for the Supreme Executor, but for galactic civilization itself. The emergency council session convened in the only chamber large enough to hold representatives from every major species on the station, the Grand Observatory. Its domed ceiling, normally displaying the serene patterns of distant nebulae, now reflected the tension filling the room as hundreds of delegates jostled for position. The traditional seating arrangement by classification had been abandoned in the crisis. Classes species now stood shoulder to tentacle with those they had once deemed inferior. At the center of the chamber, a makeshift tribunal had been established. Supreme Executor Vexlar presided, flanked by representatives from each classification level, an unprecedented arrangement forced by extraordinary circumstances. "This emergency session will address two matters," Vexlar announced, his voice carrying the formal tones of council procedure despite the irregular setting. "First, the treasonous actions of Minister Jovan and his co-conspirators. Second, the status of humanity within galactic society." The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, clicks, telepathic broadcasts, and pheromone releases, each species communicating displeasure in their native manner. Order had already broken down before the session properly began. "Silence," roared Carol, her avian vocal cords amplifying the command to painful levels. The room fell quiet. Vexlar nodded gratefully to the strategos before continuing. "Minister Jovan stands accused of conspiracy with an enemy force, resulting in thousands of casualties. The evidence has been transmitted to your individual interfaces." Jovan stood proudly despite being flanked by security officers. "I acted to preserve the Council's foundational principles. For 10 millennia, we have maintained peace through careful management of emergent species. Humanity represents an unacceptable variable. By massacring your own colleagues," challenged the Thrix representative, compound eyes flashing with coordinated patterns of indignation. "Regrettable but necessary sacrifices," Jovan replied without remorse. "The human capacity for destruction cannot be overstated. Observe how quickly they've dismantled our classification system. the very backbone of galactic stability. The debate intensified, with council members taking increasingly polarized positions. Some demanded immediate human containment, citing their dangerous unpredictability. Others argued for reclassification to acknowledge their demonstrated capabilities. Ancient alliances fractured along new lines, with traditional rivals finding themselves unexpectedly aligned. Throughout the chaos, Alina Chen stood calmly at the speaker's position, waiting for her opportunity. When finally granted permission to address the council, she didn't defend humanity as many expected. Instead, she questioned the very foundation of the system itself. For millennia, you've categorized species based on technological achievement and adherence to council doctrine. She began, her voice steady. This system wasn't designed for fairness. It was designed for control. Minister Joven wasn't wrong about humanity. We are unpredictable. We don't fit your classifications. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some approving, others hostile. But look what happened when your system failed, she continued, gesturing around the room. Species you dismissed as inferior joined together and saved this station, not through superior technology, but through cooperation, creativity, and courage. Behind her stood not just humans, but representatives from dozens of formerly lower-class species, each one having contributed to the station's defense in ways that defied their assigned roles. The crystalline vox glittered with internal energy. The insectoid thrix moved in perfect synchronization, their hive mind focused on this pivotal moment. The aquatic Merlani hummed resonantly, their translucent bodies pulsing with light patterns that conveyed solidarity. We don't want to destroy your order. Alina's voice softened, yet somehow carried more power. We want to transform it into something stronger. Not a hierarchy, but a true coalition where different doesn't mean lesser. Pretty words, countered a senior Palaxian counselor, Jovan's ally. But every social system requires structure, classification, control. Without these, there is only chaos. Dr. Wong stepped forward unexpectedly. With respect, counselor, that argument ignores basic principles of complex systems. In nature, the most resilient systems aren't rigidly controlled. They're adaptive networks where diversity creates strength, not weakness. Theory dismissed the Palaxian. In practice, hierarchical systems maintain stability. Until they catastrophically fail, Raj Patel interjected. We call it the brittle system problem on Earth. The more you optimize for control, the less resilient you become to unexpected challenges. The debate intensified, with arcane points of governance and philosophy flying back and forth. Arguments about the natural order clashed with emerging theories of cooperative evolution. Historical precedents were cited and countered. The very foundations of the Council's 10,000-year governance were being questioned in real time. Throughout it all, Vexler observed silently, his three eyes moving from speaker to speaker, his facial tentacles occasionally shifting in subtle patterns that only the most observant might interpret as growing conviction. Finally, he raised a hand, and the chamber fell silent. I have seen enough, he announced, his voice resonating with formal authority. The human speaks wisdom we have forgotten. I call for Reformation Protocol Omega. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The protocol hadn't been invoked in 5,000 years, since the last fundamental restructuring of council governance. Supreme Executor, you cannot. The Palaxian counselor began. I can, and I do. Vexlar interrupted, his tentacles flaring in a pattern that brooked no argument. Our system has become brittle, as the human engineer observed. We survived today not because of our classifications and controls, but despite them. His gaze swept the chamber, meeting the eyes, optical sensors, and sensory organs of each delegation in turn. The vote begins now. Reformation or stagnation? Choose. 6 months later, the newly christened Galactic Cooperative convened its first formal assembly. The transformation of the council headquarters reflected the philosophical shift in governance. The towering hierarchical chamber had been redesigned as a circular forum, where representatives sat as equals, regardless of their technological advancement or evolutionary history. Where once the supreme executor had presided from an elevated platform, Facilitator Vexlar, his title changed to reflect his new role, now stood at the same level as all other representatives. His imposing figure still commanded respect, but his posture had changed subtly, more open, less rigid, his facial tentacles rarely still as he engaged directly with species he would once have addressed only through intermediaries. Representatives of the cooperative, Vexlar began, his resonant voice carrying easily through the chamber. Today we welcome our newest members. One by one, delegations approached the central circle, frontier worlds previously deemed unworthy of representation, synthetic intelligences once classified as tools rather than citizens, and even reformed Nexari colonies seeking peaceful integration after their military leadership had been overthrown in the wake of the failed assault. Each new member presented their unique contribution to galactic society, not measured by technological might, but by cultural, philosophical, ecological, or creative offerings. The classification system that had defined galactic society for millennia had been replaced by a collaborative framework that valued diverse contributions. Ambassador Elena Chen, now serving as Earth's permanent representative, watched with quiet satisfaction. The human delegation had expanded to include specialists from various fields, each engaged in knowledge exchange with counterparts from across the galaxy. Dr. Wong led a cross-species medical research initiative. Raj Patel collaborated with engineers from a dozen worlds on sustainable station designs. Sergeant Martinez, now captain, trained a multi-species security force that emphasized adaptive tactics rather than rigid protocols. As the formal proceedings concluded, Vexlar approached Elena in the garden atrium, a neutral space designed for informal discussions. "The irony is not lost on me," he confided, his skin shifting through thoughtful colors. "In attempting to protect our system from humanity's influence, Joven accelerated the very transformation he feared." Elena smiled. "Adaptability is contagious, it seems." "Indeed, and terrifying," Vexlar admitted. 10,000 years of tradition changed in 6 months. "Not change," Elena corrected gently. "Evolved. That's what living things do, or they stagnate and die." Vexlar's central eye focused on her with unexpected intensity. "You know there is still resistance. Many former council species have withdrawn to their home systems rather than participate in the cooperative. They view these changes as degradation, not evolution." "We expected that," Elena acknowledged. "Cultural transformation is never universal or instantaneous. Some will resist until they see the benefits firsthand. And if they never do," Vexlar pressed, "if they unite against us." Elena's expression remained serene. "Then we'll adapt to that challenge too. That's the strength of our new approach. We're not rigid, we're resilient." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a Thrix representative, whose compound eyes flickered with urgent communication patterns. "Facilitator, Ambassador, the Merlani Vox Collaborative has completed the prototype transdimensional communicator. If successful, it will allow real-time communication across the galaxy without relay stations." "Impossible," Vexlar murmured. "Our scientists have deemed such technology theoretically unattainable." "Your scientists worked alone," Elena reminded him with a gentle smile. "Theirs worked together, combining perspectives no one had thought to merge before." Later, as the Earth delegation prepared to return home for consultations, Elena paused at an observation port. Below, the reconstructed station spread out like a glittering web of light, each section housing species that would never have interacted under the old regime. Beyond it, the vastness of the galaxy stretched into infinity, billions of stars, countless worlds, limitless potential. She recalled that day of judgment, the dismissal, the classification as inferior. Earth had come seeking acceptance, and found something better. The opportunity to build something new. The Galactic Council had deemed humans inferior and instantly regretted it. Not because humans conquered them, but because humanity had shown them a better way to exist among the stars. Behind her, Vexlar observed silently, his skin pulsing with an emotion no translation matrix could capture, something between fear and exhilaration. His 3 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of profound revelation in his culture. The humans were just getting started. Across the galaxy, on countless worlds previously ignored or suppressed by council dictates, news of the transformation spread. Species long resigned to subordinate roles began to question, to innovate, to connect with others in ways previously forbidden. Ancient restrictive treaties were challenged. Suppressed technologies were developed. Cultural exchanges flourished. And in distant parts of space, beyond even the former council's awareness, other civilizations took notice, some with concern, others with hope. The galaxy was changing in ways no predictive model could have anticipated. All because a species deemed inferior had asked a simple question: what if there's a better way?